I hadn't even made it past the lobby when some fresh-faced assistant tried to hand me a visitor's badge that said spouse of employee, not consultant, not partner delegate. Spouse. I looked down at my black slacks, low heels, and the tablet in my hand and thought, yeah, I probably did look like someone's bored wife killing time before lunch. So I took the damn badge, smiled politely, and walked through the glass doors of a company I hadn't stepped foot in since the Clinton administration. 25 years. That's how long it had been since I left this place. Not fired, not laid off. Left. Voluntarily. After building half their infrastructure with a baby on my hip and a divorce decree in my purse. I didn't throw a tantrum. I didn't take anything with me but a backup drive and my last shred of dignity. And now, here I was, back, older, sharper, and backed by one of the most powerful logistics conglomerates in the hemisphere. But sure, call me spouse. I moved through the halls like a ghost slipping through a haunted house. They'd painted over the yellow walls, swapped the carpet for vinyl, replaced the vending machines. But the bones were the same. I even passed an old fire escape where I used to cry during smoke breaks. And yet, not a single soul recognized me. No nods, no double takes. Just that glazed over look people get when they're too buried in Slack notifications to look up and register a living human being. I entered the 10th floor conference room quietly, tucked into the back row, and watched as the newest generation of self-important management bros assembled like they were auditioning for a LinkedIn thought leaders calendar. One guy in his 30s, probably thinks beard oil counts as personality, glanced at me, then smirked at his buddy. "Someone bring their mom to work today?" he muttered under his breath. I didn't flinch. I've been underestimated in boardrooms where I designed the table they were sitting at. I've been mistaken for the cleaning crew on a day I closed a $12 million contract. You learn to let silence do the heavy lifting. Quick break here. If you're listening this far, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do, and it really helps the team keep these stories coming. Thanks. They kicked off the meeting with a flashy slide deck full of buzzwords that meant nothing. Synergy, hypergrowth, next-gen vertical integration. The department head, Mr. Beard Oil, ran the show. He talked fast and loud, clearly mistaking volume for authority. I watched him strut through graphs and projections like he invented Excel. Then came the introductions. A few attendees were asked to stand and explain who they were and what division they represented. When the coordinator gestured toward me, clearly not expecting much, I simply said, "I'm here representing Eastern Holdings." That should have meant something. It did mean something. Eastern Holdings controls the international distribution contracts that this company is desperate to renew. $120 million worth of desperate, in fact. But to them, just a name tag that said spouse. The coordinator blinked. "Oh, okay. Well, thanks for being here." I smiled and nodded, then leaned back in my chair and quietly started taking notes. The CEO wasn't in the room yet, which was telling. He always liked to make a scene. But the moment he walked in, everything would change. I just had to sit still long enough to let the fire start itself. It didn't take long before the room started to fidget under the weight of its own self-importance. You could smell the desperation in the air, cheap cologne, reheated ambition, and PowerPoint anxiety. The department head, some smug mid-level caricature of a man named Bryce or Trent, or something equally forgettable, was pacing the front like a TED Talk reject, pointing at slides like he'd personally discovered market dynamics. I'd seen his type 100 times, loud confidence built on borrowed data and buzzwords he barely understood. I sat back, legs crossed, pen tapping softly against my notebook. I wasn't here to correct anyone. Not yet. My job was to observe, note how far the rot had spread beneath the marble countertops. Eastern Holdings didn't care about their branded mugs or their pastel quarterly brochures. They cared about performance. And based on this meeting alone, it was clear no one had driven a hard conversation in this building since the iPhone 3. That's when Bryce spotted me again. He paused mid-sentence, scanned the room, then smirked like he'd just found a punchline too good to keep. "Hope everyone brought their parents for moral support today," he said, not even looking my way directly. "I see someone's grandpa's really into corporate strategy." A few low chuckles rumbled from the cheaper seats, mostly younger guys trying to score proximity points. One woman, early 40s, sharp blazer, eyes like a sniper, glanced over at me and didn't laugh. She just blinked once and looked away, like maybe something in her gut was starting to register. I didn't blink, didn't react, just made another note in my pad. Bryce didn't stop. Of course he didn't. He was performing now. But seriously, folks, let's get back to the actual data. We can catch up with the AARP representative during the coffee break. More laughter, a few forced coughs to cover the awkwardness. I kept my eyes on the screen, not because I cared what was on it, but because the more still I sat, the more uncomfortable they got. It's an old trick. Silence can do more damage than a well-timed insult. It makes people question what they missed. Truth was, I'd seen the numbers already. My team had them 2 weeks ago. We'd analyzed them, torn them apart, run simulations through our own software just to be sure. What Bryce was calling breakthrough forecasting, we'd flagged as 3 quarters behind best practice trends. Their pipeline wasn't innovating, it was decaying under the weight of its own ego. Still, I watched, measured. I needed to see how deep the arrogance went. Who nodded when Bryce talked? Who didn't? Who asked real questions, and who waited until the room laughed to join in? The CEO was still nowhere to be seen, which struck me as deliberate. If I knew him, and I did, he was waiting to make an entrance. Probably got wind I was in the building and was deciding whether to act surprised or spin a narrative. Either way, the pressure was building. 15 more minutes of Bryce's strategy kabuki theater and I started sketching little tombstones in the margins of my notepad. It was that bad. And then, just as Bryce launched into a tone-deaf joke about old-school systems needing to be euthanized, the conference room door cracked open. I didn't look up yet. Let the moment stretch. But the room shifted. People started sitting straighter, glancing towards the door like kids caught swearing in church. I turned my head, and there he was, the CEO, white as printer paper, staring straight at me. For the first time all morning, the room went quiet. Bryce had gotten cocky. That was his fatal flaw. Not arrogance, that's survivable in corporate, cockiness. That sloppy beer buzz brand of bravado that makes a man forget which way the power lines run. He strutted across the front of the room, sleeves rolled just enough to show off his CrossFit watch tan, clicking through slides that were older than most of the interns. His latest masterpiece was a flowchart titled Legacy Systems versus future readiness. I recognized the framework because I wrote it 15 years ago in a cabin on a laptop with a broken shift key. Now, obviously, Bryce said, pacing in front of my face like I wasn't even there, we can't be bogged down by the way things used to work. Outdated systems, outdated partnerships. He paused, looked right at me. Outdated people. That got a chuckle. But he wasn't done. Let's be honest, he added, with a grin wide enough to show every capped tooth. People like you don't belong in places like this anymore. Boom, there it was. A full silence bloomed, then laughter cracked open like a can of beer at a tailgate. Nervous, braying, eager to please. Some of them didn't even hear the words, just felt the social cue to laugh. I didn't move, didn't furrow my brow, didn't scoff. I just eased back into my chair and crossed my arms, slowly, deliberately, like I was watching a kid set fire to his own birthday cake. Across the table, an intern's smile faltered. She glanced at me, then back at Bryce, then down at her notepad. Her hands shook a little. A VP on the left side of the room, short guy, nervous eyes, gave a tight frown. The kind of expression you get when your stomach realizes something before your brain does. But he didn't say a damn word. Typical. Bryce was still grinning, fully unaware that the air had changed. Anyway, he said, turning back to the screen, this is where we get serious. International strategy projections, Q3 and Q4 rollout. The door slammed open, hard, no knock, no warning, and suddenly there was the CEO storming in like he'd just found a body in the parking lot. His face wasn't red. It was drained. All the color sucked out, like someone had pulled the plug on his circulatory system. His tie was crooked. His jacket was still unbuttoned. He wasn't here to make an entrance. He was here because he was too late. He scanned the room fast, wild eyes sweeping the conference table, like a man trying to find a live grenade. Then he saw me, and stopped, dead still. You ever watch a person's brain try to rewind reality? That's what happened. 1 second, Bryce was talking about projected market penetration in the EU. The next, the CEO was frozen in the doorway like he'd just seen a ghost. His eyes locked on mine. And that was the moment the room began to realize. They had all missed something. Someone. Bryce, to his credit, finally noticed. Morning, sir, he offered, a little too casually. Just walking the team through Q4 objectives. The CEO didn't blink. He didn't look at Bryce. He just kept staring at me, mouth slightly open. Silence spread again, this time jagged, electric. Someone dropped a pen. No one bent to pick it up. Then the CEO finally spoke. Not to Bryce, not to the room, to all of them. Do you have any idea who this is? You could have heard a paperclip hit the carpet. Nobody answered him. The CEO's voice just hung there, sharp, stunned, almost pleading, like he already knew the answer, and it terrified him. Do you have any idea who this is? He repeated, quieter this time. Like if he said it again, maybe someone in the room would grow a spine. Bryce looked around, confused, like a kid trying to remember the rules of a game he thought he was winning. The smirk on his face started to slip, just barely, like he wasn't sure if this was part of some performance review prank. Across the table, the same sharp-eyed woman from earlier, tan blazer, hair in a tight knot, tilted her phone toward her lap and started typing furiously. 5 seconds. 10. Her eyes locked onto something, then widened. She didn't gasp dramatically. She just drew in a breath, quiet, sharp, involuntary, like she'd found a name she wasn't supposed to see. She slowly lowered her phone and turned her head toward me. She didn't say a word, didn't need to. One by one, the others noticed. The way the CEO stood frozen, the way the color hadn't returned to his face, the way Bryce now looked like a man who'd walked into the wrong bathroom and didn't know how to leave. Nobody laughed anymore. And me? I just stared down at my notes. A little doodle of a guillotine I'd been sketching while Bryce babbled about synergy. Funny how memory works. In that moment, still as death in a glossy conference room, I was back in the server closet 25 years ago. Elbows deep in bundled cabling, wiring the company's first internal data mesh with a soldering gun and a busted flashlight between my teeth. My hands were raw, sleep-deprived, and full of purpose. That infrastructure? That was mine. The blueprint, the protocols, the stack, they all started with me. But no one outside the old guard ever knew, because I let myself vanish. The old VP, Tom Runnels, may he rot somewhere humid, didn't like women who didn't smile when he made jokes about girl brains and emotional decision-making. He didn't like that I questioned his licensing agreements or rewrote his disaster recovery plan. He especially didn't like that the board kept asking me to brief the security roadmap instead of him. So I made it easy for him. One day, I just stopped showing up. No announcement, no farewell cake, no exit interview. I walked out, left the badge on my desk, and drove to a quiet co-op space where I started building something that couldn't be shoved into a corner by people like Tom. That turned into Eastern Holdings. And now, Eastern Holdings was the biggest international logistics channel this company had left, which meant I held the knife hovering over their $120 million distribution artery. The CEO knew that. Bryce didn't. He was still standing there, mouth slightly open, trying to find some sarcastic lifeline that might save him. But he didn't know the tides had already shifted. The power in the room was no longer his. And I wasn't just a guest anymore. I was the verdict. The CEO was already moving before the silence had a chance to rot. He came around the table fast, no eye contact with Bryce, no pleasantries for the room. Just a hand on my arm and a hushed, "Can we speak privately?" I let him guide me out, calm as a monk. The glass doors swung shut behind us, muting the conference room like a fishbowl sealing tight. We walked past two interns who stopped mid-step when they saw his face. They knew something had shifted, even if they didn't know what. He led me into a side office, modern, over-decorated, sterile as hell. Corporate minimalism with fake succulents and a motivational canvas that read, "Lead with grit." I'd seen better taste in dentist lobbies. "I had no idea you were coming," he started, voice already cracking at the edges. "We weren't told Eastern was sending you personally. If we'd known—" "Stop," I said. He froze, like a deer hearing the twig snap. I turned, looked him square in the eye for the first time since he walked in. "I didn't come for apologies," I said. "I came to see if you're still worth backing." And there it was. His whole posture changed, like I'd finally translated the dream he was stuck in. His shoulders deflated, knees subtly bent, neck lowered half an inch. Submission, but also comprehension. He got it now. Eastern Holdings wasn't just considering renewing their exclusive distribution deal. We were auditing. This was our site visit. And I wasn't some random consultant. They'd sent me. The one with receipts. the one who could walk into a boardroom full of old wolves and still have them sitting up straight. "I'm going to fix this," he said quickly. This whole thing with Bryce, he didn't know. He doesn't know anything." "That," I replied, "is part of the problem." He didn't argue, didn't try to reframe it, didn't offer some thin excuse about mentorship or internal growth or goddamn Gen Z leadership development. He just nodded, then picked up the phone and hit an intercom button. "Have Bryce come to my office, now." There was a pause, then a flustered voice responded, "Yes, sir." I turned my back to him, gazed out the window. They'd expanded the parking lot. Where the tree used to be, there was now a massive branded sign. New name, same skeleton. 30 seconds later, the door clicked open behind me. "Yo, what's up?" Bryce's voice rang out too loud, still riding high on whatever delusion he'd built his personality on. He strolled in like he was coming to grab a snack from the break room. Didn't even see me at first. "I was just finishing up in there," he said. "Had 'em rolling? What's going?" Then he saw me and stopped. Again. He still didn't get it. Not fully. But he felt it this time. Like a dog hearing a frequency that says run. I turned to face him, said nothing. The CEO gestured to a chair, curt. "Close the door, Bryce." Bryce looked at the chair, then at me, then back at the CEO. "Wait, is this about... Look, I didn't know she was..." He stopped himself. Too late. His smirk had cracked, but the pieces were still twitching, trying to reassemble. "You're going to want to listen," the CEO said flatly, very, very carefully. Bryce didn't sit. He hovered. The kind of fidgety, twitchy posture a man takes when he knows he's on thin ice, but still thinks his sneakers might save him. His arms were folded like a shield, but his face was starting to betray him. Tight jaw, pupils too wide. He was a man who had just figured out he brought a Nerf gun to a firing squad. I let the CEO speak first. He stammered through the kind of diplomatic filler executives use when they know they're outmatched but can't afford to admit it. "I want to make clear this doesn't reflect our culture," he said. "Our values. I assure you, our leadership bench is deeper than what you saw today. Bryce, well, we've had some blind spots, clearly." "Blind spots," I said flatly, "are what crash planes." I let that settle. Then I looked him square in the eye, and for the first time since entering that building, I spoke with the full weight of what I represented. "If that's the caliber of leadership here now," I said calmly, "we may have to revisit your eligibility." The CEO didn't blink, but someone else in the room did. Legal. She was sitting in the corner, quiet until that moment. Junior VP, maybe late 30s, hair in a perfect twist, legal pad clenched so tightly the paper had started to curl. At the word eligibility, she froze like someone had poured ice water down her spine. She knew. Clause 7.3b, subsection delta, buried deep in the partnership agreement. It outlined criteria for sustained executive competency and cultural alignment across international-facing divisions. In simple terms, if Eastern Holdings determined that a partner's leadership posed material risk to distribution efficiency or brand equity, we could pull the plug. No warning, no payout, just exit, unilaterally. The CEO turned to her slowly. Is that in force?" Her voice was brittle. "If Eastern logs the event, and if it's escalated to phase 2 of evaluation, then yes, it's enforceable." He turned back to me, but I was already reaching for my phone. I tapped the name at the top of my contacts. Vera, Eastern HQ Ops Lead. Hit call. 1 ring. "Phase 2, I said. Understood, she replied, and hung up. That was it. No drama, no theatrics. Just a scalpel sliding beneath the skin. Within 5 minutes, you could feel the building shift. I don't mean metaphorically. I mean literally. The buzz of HR notifications, the blinking of secure comms lights in legal, the sudden rustle of executive assistants peeking around corners. Phase 2 wasn't just a threat. It triggered a full audit, leadership reviews, org chart scrubs, cross-departmental interviews. Every quote Bryce had ever spat into Slack or whispered at happy hour was now under a microscope. Bryce, the CEO said quietly, you're being placed on immediate administrative leave, pending an internal inquiry. Please surrender your badge. Bryce opened his mouth, closed it, then laughed, a short, pathetic chuckle like he was still trying to spin it as a misunderstanding. You're serious? He asked, looking between us. Because I cracked a joke? Come on, you're going to burn a global deal over me? I didn't answer, because it wasn't about him anymore. It never was. He was just the loose wire that exposed the entire system's rot. 2 HR reps appeared outside the glass wall, faces pale, expressions polite. He looked back one last time, eyes flicking to me with a strange mix of fear and confusion. Like he still didn't understand what I was. I didn't move, didn't blink, didn't smile, just waited for the door to shut behind him. It started with a Slack message, just a vague ripple. Anyone know what's going on upstairs? Then another. Heard someone got escorted out by HR? High up? Bryce? Within 30 minutes, it turned to full-on tremors. You could hear the shift in the hallways. Doors didn't just close, they slammed. Executives pacing, heads down, whispering into phones like their jobs depended on it, which, this time, they actually did. By noon, the internal portal leaked it. Eastern Holdings reviewing exclusive distribution agreement. Status, active inquiry. And that was all it took. The panic didn't scream, it bled. Trading volumes spiked before the close. A 2-point dip in stock value. A panicked email blast from investor relations trying to overcorrect. We remain confident in our leadership and external partnerships. Followed by a 2-hour emergency call with the board. None of it mattered. The Whisper network had already mutated into something with teeth. Wait, is that true? We're losing Eastern? Someone from Holdings was here this morning. I heard they sent a partner, like a real one, and Bryce insulted them. What partner? That older guy, or woman, I didn't catch a name, but legal froze when they saw her. No one said my name, not yet. But the guesses started multiplying. Some said I was a shadow exec. Others swore I was a corporate spy. One particularly jumpy product lead swore I was an auditor from the SEC. Another said he saw me talking to the CEO and legal and HR, so I must have been with the feds. Bless his heart. But the truth had already started seeping in where it mattered. Old hallway photos. There weren't many of them left, but in one wing, the part they hadn't fully remodeled, there were still some frames gathering dust on a back wall near the break room. Founders, early team offsites, groundbreaking ceremonies. And in one of them, I was right there, hair longer, glasses bigger, hands wrapped around a server rack, smiling at the camera with a tired, quiet pride that only people who've built something from nothing understand. One of the interns, Eliza, I think, spotted it first. She leaned in, squinted, then pulled up her phone and held it side by side with a photo she'd discreetly snapped that morning. Same woman, 25 years older, but same fire behind the eyes. She didn't say anything to her manager, just texted her friend. I found her. She's been here before, a long time ago. Meanwhile, I walked through the halls like I'd never left. No badge, no guide, no apologies. Just step after step on carpet I remembered when it was blue instead of beige. There was a weird ache in my chest, one I hadn't expected. Not grief, not anger. Something older, like memory wrapped in static. Every vent, every flickering panel light, every weird stain in the ceiling tile. I remembered them all. I remembered late nights, bad takeout, coding until my wrists locked. I remembered losing arguments to men with lesser minds and louder voices. I remembered giving up and walking out and promising myself I'd never look back. And yet, here I was, not looking back, but returning. And this time, no one could push me out. The boardroom was colder than I remembered. New LED panels, too bright. The kind of light that bleaches everything down to the bone. Truth, lies, hesitation. They'd brought in one of those overpriced executive consultants to redesign it sometime after I left. It looked like a luxury co-working space now. But under the new chairs and polished glass, same rot. The CEO had called for an emergency session. Most of the board was remote, faces flickering on the wall like digital ghosts, but a few had flown in. Real old money types, the ones who didn't blink at chartering a jet but would scream bloody murder over a missed Q4 forecast. I took my seat without being introduced. No nameplate, no credentials, no pitch deck. Just me. The room settled. The CEO cleared his throat, voice tight. I've asked our partner representative to speak directly today regarding our current strategic alignment with Eastern Holdings. A few raised eyebrows. One guy, southern drawl and Rolex thicker than his wrist, leaned into the mic. Thought we were still in good standing with Eastern. I smiled politely. You were? You're not? Silence. Then I spoke. Not loud, not angry, just clear, surgical. You've built a culture that rewards noise over knowledge, promotions based on optics, not outcomes. What you call lean, we've flagged as dangerously understaffed. What you call agile, we've assessed as chaos in a hoodie. A few bristled. One guy in a sport coat whispered something to the woman beside him. She didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on me. The incident this morning wasn't an isolated error. It was a symptom. The mid-level leadership pipeline here is bloated, unchecked, and actively damaging your operational credibility abroad. You're hemorrhaging institutional knowledge while inflating job titles. The legal rep on the far end of the table was taking notes with a speed that looked more like triage than minutes. I set down the file folder I'd brought, thin but heavy. Inside is a one-page option sheet. Eastern Holdings is prepared to continue the international partnership under one condition: full partner restructuring. A pause. And if we decline? Someone asked. Board member, tight haircut, finance background by the sound of it. I met his eyes. Then we walk and take the contract with us. Another pause. This one stretched longer. You could hear jackets shift. A phone vibrated somewhere. Nobody reached for it. Finally, the woman next to him, sharp suit, CFO if I had to guess, spoke. What does full partner restructuring entail? I slid the document forward. You already know who needs to go. I'm not here to make that call for you, but I'm here to verify when it's done. The CEO nodded, slowly, tired, but resigned. I'll handle it, he said, And just like that, agreement. No vote, no objections, just that strange, heavy silence that only happens when a room realizes it's finally out of road. 2 hours later, Bryce's termination was official. For cause? Security escorted him out through the east garage, back entrance. No send-off, no spin, just an HR envelope and a hollow echo of footsteps on polished tile. And me? I didn't gloat, didn't smile, didn't say a damn thing. Because the victory wasn't in his downfall. It was in the fact that this time, when I spoke, they listened. They didn't hold a ceremony. No champagne, no fake applause, no insincere LinkedIn post with a poorly cropped photo of me shaking hands under fluorescent lights. Just a single, brushed metal nameplate mounted outside the executive conference room, same spot where Bryce once strutted in and out like he owned oxygen. Global Strategy Advisory Partner, Evelyn Hart. That was it. No vanity title, no nonsense, and no desk. Because I didn't need one. I wasn't here to clock in. I was here to be reckoned with. They gave me full remote privileges, advisory authority across international markets, and a permanent seat at quarterly review. I never asked for any of it. They offered. All of it. After one meeting, no back and forth, just silence. And then a signature. Word traveled fast. People I hadn't seen in decades started sending me nervous little messages. Didn't know you were back. We should catch up. Always respected your work. I ignored most of them, not out of spite, just clarity. You don't rebuild a house by chatting with the termites. The next time I walked into that boardroom, I did it quietly. No announcement, no escort. I wore the same flats I'd worn on the first day I ever built a network that didn't crash. The room was already half full. Analysts, division heads, couple of new faces trying not to look scared. They all went quiet when I entered. Not performatively, just instinctively. The way a room goes still when the weather shifts. I sat in the back, again. Old habit. But this time, every presenter kept glancing my way, checking, double-checking, watching their phrasing, choosing every word like it could be their last if I raised an eyebrow. One of them, the new VP of European Strategy, looked maybe 35, polished, clearly ambitious. She spoke well. Clean slides, solid pacing. She made one misstep, called out a shipping partner we'd already blacklisted for violating fair labor codes in Bangladesh. She caught herself mid-sentence, looked at me. I didn't say a word, just tilted my head ever so slightly. She corrected the slide before the next meeting. The CEO stopped by afterward, hovered like he wanted to make small talk. I offered him a polite nod, and that was enough. He knew. He felt it. This wasn't my company, but now it was my jurisdiction. I didn't need revenge. That requires hate, and I stopped carrying that a long time ago. What I needed, what I got, was reclamation. Not of a title, not of a cubicle, of a voice. And power doesn't always show up with sirens and applause. Sometimes it's a woman in her late 40s, quiet as a breeze, who once soldered wires with shaking hands and now signs contracts with ink that can burn down empires. Funny. After 25 years, I finally belong here again. But now, they answer to me.